But there was good news today, but unfortunately, because of a totally avoidable scandal. The Queensland government has halted all stage 1 and 2 hormone therapies for supposedly transgender children, while it holds an independent inquiry into all this. And I think, God, at last, because it stunned me really how Australian medical authorities have been keeping a lid on this whole transgender scandal. We've had experts from Australia even and Britain saying Australian doctors are mutilating or giving puberty-suppressing drugs to teenagers without proper science to back it up. And last year, researchers commissioned by Britain's CAS review into transgender care warned that Australia's guidelines didn't insist on properly screening these children first for autism or sexual orientation or some other explanation for them saying that they were in the wrong body. Now, I don't think even they knew how bad it was, because now the New Queensland government has heard shocking claims that the Cairns Sexual Health Service even delivered apparently unauthorised gender service to 42 children without an agreed model of care. And the government said 17 of those children were allegedly given hormone therapy in a way that may not align with treatment guidelines. Joining me every Tuesday is our regular commentator, Matt Canavan, National Senator and former Resources Minister. Matt, good to see you again. You've been very vocal on this issue for a long time. Your reaction?
Well, it's great news, Andrew, as you've described there. The days of treating our children like guinea pigs has to end. Many of these so-called gender transition interventions are occurring without any proper testing or science behind the impact of what's going on. There's a particular story behind today's announcement around even the guidelines, the loose guidelines that do exist being not adhered to. It really seems like the Wild West in some of these gender transition clinics. That has to be reined in. But there's also the details behind this too. It's very important for people to understand that some of the puberty blockers here that we give to young children are not actually tested or trialled or approved for use on young children or for use to transition someone's gender. For example, take the drug Lupron, which is a drug that it has been approved, but approved to deal with testicular cancer. It's given to cancer patients, and obviously those patients typically are much, much older. What's happening here is that doctors are able to prescribe it for off-label use. It's not actually on the label to use it in this way, off-label use to our kids, without any proper testing on what are the long-term ramifications of giving a drug like that, which is about reducing someone's testosterone. That's how it controls the cancer growth. Giving it to kids that can impact them for life. This is insane. It is wrong. And this suspension should occur across the country until we get to the bottom of what's going on.
Oh, look, for all I'm praising what's happened, it's only one state and we don't know how wide the inquiry really will be. So, let's keep our fingers crossed. To another thing, you and Liberal MP Garth Hamilton have written a letter to our big banks. It's signed by another 6 coalition MPs, telling them to pull out of something called the Net Zero Banking Alliance. That's an alliance, global warming, etc., that's now being actually deserted by most big American and Canadian banks since Donald Trump's election. What is this alliance and why should our banks quit it?
Well, the alliance, Andrew, was established a few years ago to try and pressure banks to not lend to so-called carbon-intensive activities like producing coal or gas, that our whole economy floats upon, or even to things like cattle farming as well. And all of our major banks are members of this alliance. As you've hinted there, in the past few months since Donald Trump's election, there's been a cavalcade of banks leaving this alliance. Most major banks in both the US now and Canada have left. Names like JP Morgan, Bank of America have all left this alliance. And that leaves us a little bit isolated here, doesn't it, in Australia? That our banks still are potentially, and they have been actually applying these rules to all of those industries, including cattle farmers. Some of our banks are placing restrictions on lending to farmers now. Can you believe it? Our farmers will be put at a disadvantage relative to their North American competitors. We compete with Canadian, with US farmers to supply Asia. And if our financial institutions are imposing a level of red tape, bureaucracy and restrictions that do not exist in North America, we will be put at a disadvantage. Now, Andrew, as you know, under these last 2 years of Labor government, our productivity has been in free fall. It's a big reason why our standard of living is in free fall. And isn't it about time we remove these barriers and red tape from our economy working and get our banks back to their priority? What should banks do? They should be there to facilitate legal economic trade. They should not be quasi-regulators, self-appointed regulators, telling the rest of us what to do. They're not elected. They have no authority to impose these types of restrictions. They should stick to their business of lending and getting our economy moving.
And these policies are strangling the economy. Just quickly, Matt, I've run out of time, but I need to ask you, because you might be able to help. Have you noticed the big pre-election move by Energy Minister Chris Bowen? Now, poll shows about the most unpopular Labor minister. There was a poll late last year, which is no wonder with power prices the way they've gone. And it's gone, it seems to me, almost into hiding. He's given just 3 press conferences this month. The last speech he gave, that's listed on his website, was in November. And 4 weeks ago, he even cancelled his account on X, where he has 140,000 followers, and moved to the backwater of Blue Sky, where he has just 1,300 followers and very little backchat. Seems to me Labor wants Bowen out of the spotlight. Have you seen him?
I haven't seen him, fortunately. I'm not missing Chris over summer. Maybe I'll run into him next week when we're back in Canberra. But, you know, I mean, if this is some kind of 3-card trick from Labor, I don't think the Australian people will be fooled, because it was the Prime Minister who promised Australians almost 100 times before the last election that he personally would cut your power bills by $275 if he were elected. So I don't think the Australian people are mugs. I don't think they're going to let Labor get away with this. And it doesn't even matter if they sack Chris Bowen from the ministry. It's ultimately the Prime Minister here which has to be accountable for the promises he made.
The damage is done. I think he should have been sacked some time ago or quietly moved on, but now they're going to pay the price, Labor, for what he's done. Matt Canavan, thank you so much for your time.